Many of you have lost connection with your network and community in the last 2+ years. This could be your business community aging out on you, losing contact with family and friends. You may have lost contact with religious organizations or social groups and civic groups. For many, these are the people who pulled you along in your career and life. Now is the time to reestablish old connections and create new ones. Cue the music.
Welcome to the Repurpose Your Career podcast, brought to you by Career Pivot. This podcast is where those of us in the second half of life come together to discuss how to repurpose our careers for the 21st century. Come listen to career experts give you proven strategies. Listen to people like you tell their stories on how they repurpose their careers. And finally, get your questions answered. Your host, Mark Miller, has made 6 career pivots over the last 30 years. He understands this is not about jumping out of the frying pan into a fire, but rather to create a plan where you make clear, actionable steps or pivots to a better future career. Are you ready to repurpose your career?
Welcome to episode 278 of the Repurpose Your Career podcast. My name is Mark Miller, and I'll be your host every Monday for discussion on what it's like to repurpose your career. Many of you have lost connection with your network or community in the last 2+ years. This could be your business community aging out on you, losing contact with family and friends. You may have lost contact with religious organizations, social groups, or civic groups. For many, these are the people who pulled you along in your career and life. Now is the time to reestablish old connections and create new ones. I wrote a post about a year ago called, "Has Your Network Aged Out and Abandoned You During the Pandemic?" If you're like me and are over the age of 50, and I'm a little bit older than that, it would not surprise anyone that your mentors, career champions, and colleagues who have supported you in your career are not available anymore. They may have retired, no longer be in a position of influence, or they may have died during the pandemic. I've also written about the power of community. In the post Community, what is the value of belonging to one? I highly recommend you check out that article, and links will be in the show notes. It is your network and the communities that you have belonged to that brought you the success up to this point. Now is the time to start to rebuild them. I wrote a mega blog post 5 years ago, surprising it's that long ago, Strategic Networking Playbook, Who, How, and When. In this episode, I will take you through this process to help you plan out your network. I want you to be able to dissect your network and understand what you've got to do next. In a later episode, I will take you through what you should be doing now. However, before we get to the episode, let's have a word from our sponsor, Career Pivot. The Career Pivot membership community is a group of people from all over the U.S. and Canada with diverse backgrounds. This is a community where everyone is there to help everyone else figure out what they want to do in the second half of life and then make it happen. Many have made changes that they did not know existed or was possible when they came to the community. They learn from each other and broaden their horizons on what was really possible. Let's hear what Cleo had to say about being part of the community.
I got a lot of support, just the knowledge that you're not alone. Other people are struggling with the exact same thing, and there are ways to deal with it. There are people, some really interesting success stories that, maybe that's not exactly what I can or want to do, but and you can see the benefits that people get from different things like that. A couple people that took that positive intelligence course, I could see a real difference in how they acted, felt, and their success after they completed it. And I didn't end up taking the course, but I got the book. I put it as an audio book on my phone, so I would listen to it while I was at the gym. And it helped me too, just controlling anxiety, getting back to reality, keeping your mind in a good place. And then there are people that I can reach out to, like if I had something going on and I just felt like I needed to talk to somebody, there were people I could talk that were happy to talk to me. So it's been a positive thing.
I'm recruiting new members. If you are interested in learning more about the endeavor, please go to careerpivot.com/community. This will be a short episode. As I got into this, I decided to break it up so we can work on the piece of planning your network before you move on. Now on to discussing how to plan your network. In this episode, I want to talk about strategic networking. Now, for many of you, when I say networking, your palms get sweaty. You'd rather go in for a root canal than walk into a room full of strangers. I'm not talking about that kind of networking. I'm talking about building strategic relationships that really has nothing to do with going to a networking event. True networking occurs when you meet one-on-one and you develop relationships. Now, the first thing I want to address is, who do you need to have relationships with? The first group is what I call connectors. This is probably a small piece of your network, but these are the people who like connecting people to other people. They're people who know people. Or there was a commercial a number of years ago that said, I got people. These are the people who can matchmake for you. You may very well find that recruiters are very good connectors. I want you to dig through your Rolodex or your email contacts list or your LinkedIn connections and see who are the people who've connected you in the past. The second group I want you to look at is mentors. Yeah, I know when I got started in my career in the late 70s, no one discussed with me mentors. I needed a mentor. Well, I now have lots of mentors in different areas. And I want you to think about, okay, what areas do you need mentors in? And then we're going to start working on finding those people. The third area are industry and company experts. What's happened to your industry? What's happened to your company? These are people who are in your industry or company that you need to know. Be selective. Make sure they know who you are and what value you bring to the table. You don't need to necessarily form a bond with these people, but you need to get on their radar screen. As you start looking at what you want to do next, go find these people. And then the last is your peers. What's happened to your peers over the last 3 to 4 years, and are they still around? I want you to start, as you start looking at contacts and network, putting people in those 4 buckets. The next thing I want you to do is I want you to look at your tribe. I call your tribe the 150 people who you can actually know you and you can go ask for a favor. Now the 150 number comes from a concept called the Dunbar number, which was a guy named Robin Dunbar did a study of Christmas card sending habits of the English, and they sent cards on average to 153 people each year. The number 150 comes up all over the place. Chimpanzee families usually reach a maximum of 150. Amish break up the communities when they reach 150. So the question comes down to who needs to be in those 150. So first, go look at your existing network. As I said, dig through your contacts and LinkedIn. And who can you actually, if you ask for a favor, you could actually expect to get something in return. I've got, 8,000-10,000 LinkedIn connections. They're not all in my tribe. I've probably got, a few, I got 100 to 150 people. I know that if I need something, I can go to them. I want you to start looking at your network and then, okay, where do you need to build this up? Now is the time to start saying, okay, what's missing from my network? Do I have too few connectors? Do I need to build company industry experts? Do I need to find a mentor? More importantly, do I need to find a mentor who is much younger than me? Yes, it's called networking down. I've talked about this many times in a lot of the age discrimination podcast episodes, where we tend to age segregate. And because the pandemic, we're getting older, we need to network down. We need to network with people younger than us. What I want you to do is I want you to understand there is a magic word I want you to get in your brain as you start doing outreach. And the magic word is advice. And I've got a blog post on this. And this is called asking for air. Now, what you really are going to do is you're going to ask for advice, insights, and recommendations. By the way, when you ask for advice, it's a compliment. When you ask for advice, people rarely will turn you down. And I want you to talk about this on nauseam in different parts of my blog. If you go back to the podcasts I've done with Tom Singer, when his business of being a public speaker blew up in beginning of 2020, at the beginning of the pandemic, he decided every day he was going to ask one smart person every single day, what do you think I ought to do? Similarly, I want you to think about doing the same thing. I want you to start doing a weekly outreach. Now, Tom said, I'm going to ask one smart person every single day. I think that's a good goal. Will that happen? Probably not. But the idea is trying to schedule one phone call, virtual meeting, a Zoom call every day and be able to ask for advice. What do you think I ought to do? And then the insights, what are the things that you see? And then what do you think I ought to do? What recommendations? Who can you introduce me to? Who should I talk to next? And at that point, you should start looking at just keep on talking to people and talking to your people and digging through everything you have so that you can build up your tribe. The last thing I want you to do is also get in the habit of digging through your contacts and doing a reconnect with people. Over the entire time of the pandemic, I've tried to reach out to somebody once a week, twice a week. Sometimes it's just picking up the phone call and calling people. In fact, I just did that the other day. Or writing a simple email. Things like, hey, I haven't heard from you in a while. How you doing? How's the family? How's the business going? My son got married. Business is still slow, but getting better. Do you have time to talk? And you'll probably get a response. Now, besides having these phone calls, I want you also to plan to have face-to-face meetings. Now, for some of you, this is terrifying. And that's where my next episode, where we will discuss how to kind of get back into the face-to-face networking scene, because I think that is probably one of the more problematic things that people need to learn how to do again. With that, let me know if this has been worthwhile. Thank you very much. I will have links to all the articles I reference. Please go read those articles and start to take action. I will publish in a couple of weeks another episode on how to get back into face-to-face networking and re-engaging with communities. Take a moment, go to careerpivot.com, sign up for the weekly Career Pivot Insights newsletter, which is sent out each Sunday. You will get a weekly update on this podcast, white papers, and new blog posts. I have recently published my latest white paper, Ageism, the Last Acceptable Bias. If you subscribe to the newsletter, you will get an opportunity to download it. While there, do not forget to go to the Career Pivot community, which can be found at careerpivot.com/community. Feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn. Look for Career Pivot on Facebook and LinkedIn. You'll also find me on Twitter at Career Pivot. Thank you for listening all the way to the end of the Repurpose Your Career podcast. You will find all the show notes at careerpivot.com/episode-278. You can subscribe to the podcast on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Google Podcasts, Podbeam, Overcast, Spotify, Pandora, Amazon Music, and lots of other places where podcasts can be found. This podcast can be found on the Repurpose Your Career podcast channel on YouTube. Hope to see you next Monday for another episode of Repurpose Your Career podcast.